Mr. Hathaway, you spoke earlier about, you've been a long-time city commissioner, 16, 18 years, and you're heavily involved in the Florida League of Cities, head of the Volusia League of Cities. Where would your experience, how would that benefit you in that 2-year term if you're elected to the District 3 seat?
Well, the reality is I'm going to be starting this job day one. I mean, I know the players, I know the principals, I know who they are. I know, the reality is, all I need to do is have your citizenry input come in to me saying, this is what we need to have occur in Oak Hill, this is what we need to have occur in Edgewater, this is what we need to have occur in the other cities, and then I'm ready to go to work. I mean, I've been doing this, this has been another job of my life for the last almost 20 years. And in fact, I gave 3 years of my life prior to being elected as city commissioner to the CRA. I mean, so I'm giving back to my community almost 25 years of my life. So, I'm ready to move forward and give another 2 years.
Mr. Hathaway, after the Helen Cawthon experience with the team Volusia, 1 year in a job, a lot of money invested, now there's talk about a new guy coming in, a lot of money invested. If it doesn't work this time, then what? Do you have faith that it will work this time? Mr. Hathaway, like what Ms. Dennis was talking about, we on the private sector are providing this tonight, this dialogue. What can you do as the elected official at the county level to make it relevant to all of us?
I think I stated that almost at the very beginning.
About the meetings.
About the meeting time. I'm dead serious about that, folks. If the meeting times aren't conducive for you to be able to appear, or for you to be able to be represented at your meeting, then there's something wrong. And if we make these meetings at a time frame when you're at work, or you can't be there because it's the middle of the day, why in the world would we expect that? I mean, we work for you. Why would you mandate it? I'm not going to go to a meeting at 9 o'clock in the morning to land. And why don't we talk about relocating meetings, some of the meetings over on the east side of the county? What's wrong with that? What's not wrong with rotating a little bit here? I mean, there are a lot of things that we could do differently to make this government more reflective of you, the residents, you, the citizens, than what we're doing here. And I'm open for all your comments and your suggestions in that regard. But believe me, I'm certainly not sold on what's happening in the land. If I were, I wouldn't be running for this seat.
Thank you. We're a couple minutes behind schedule, but I'd like to open it up to the audience. If you have a comment, please give your full name.
I have a question for each. First question.
Please give your full name.
Mike Arden, I live here in Oak Hill. Question for Ms. Denny's first. Airport advisory boards. I've been in civil aviation in this county for 35 years. Sometimes it hasn't been very civil. I was on the Ormond Beach Airport Advisory Board in 1998 when somebody came in and said, I want to open up a new business. The good old boys circled the wagons and fought him tooth and nail, and he finally outlasted them and became the biggest employer at the Ormond Beach Airport. How are you going to keep that from happening in the local airport advisory boards? Because they are fiercely protective of their own turf.
And very quickly, because we have a lot of people that want to ask questions.
You're talking not an aviation authority at the county level, but you're talking the current advisory boards?
The airport advisory boards you were speaking of to bring new business in, which actually seems to chase it away.
Well, actually what I was referring to from my comment was that we need an airport authority at the county level. We have Embry-Riddle, for example, Space Florida, out of, it's not just out of Titusville, but Space Florida is an economic development agency from the state. We can tap into that, but we've been tapped in the emerging SIS, Strategic Intermodal System, because we don't have an airport authority. Even Sanford Airport has an airport authority. So to brand and to strengthen the brand with Embry-Riddle, which is obvious, everything that they're doing, with the prototypes that are coming in, with Embry Air down at Melbourne, with all the spin-off on the technologies that come with the aerospace industry, there's great potential here, but there's some strides we need to make at the county level, the advisory board level, the local advisory board level. All politics is local. That's a
Jim.
I don't know how the council can do that.
Mr. Hathaway, you want to throw your comment in there on that?
You want me to respond to the same
No,
question?
I have a different question
Okay.
for you. Yours, I'm sorry, is much easier. The emails that you were getting for the copper and dial, the business inquiries, I've been chasing that for several months as I'm trying to get involved in business development here in Oak Hill. I can't find anybody who will admit to saying, oh, I send them out, can I put you on the mailing list? How do I get on that mailing list?
But I'll be happy to. You can request an email of me, because it's a public record. Once it comes on my computer as an email, you can request it of me, and I'll make sure you get a copy of that email.
Thank you.
So that's all you need to do. And my email address is jhathaway3@hotmail.com.
That's your campaign email.
That's right. Yeah, you know, I mean, I'll give you the city email too. The city email is if you need it.
I just want the job, the
Okay.
business inquiry emails.
That was in the last debate, but the whole issue about emergency versus non-emergency, and that's where the real costs are coming in.
That's right.
Should the county be drawing a line, hey, look, get your own ride to the hospital. You're not, this isn't a life and death, this isn't a heart attack, this isn't a broken neck. Where do you draw the line on that?
I think that that's going to be something that's going to be worked out in terms of how the system works in the pilot program. I think you're going to find they're going to make some blending where you're going to have 2 units at the scene at the same time. There's going to have to be a decision made, just like I say about protocols, who gets the care, who gets the transport. The issue is always going to come down to dollars and cents, wrong or right. That's that's behind the whole system, and it may not be what we want to hear, but Edgewater wants to do it. The county's allowing them to do it on a trial basis to determine whether it will work. And if it does work, then it can be expanded to other cities. And it can be opened up, just like I say, to the greater aspect of transporting, because the county, the county manager, I said, he would pull back a unit, an ambulance of evac off of that area if it were found to be a successful program and it worked financially for it.
Do you think it can work?
Well, hopefully it will work. You know, I think it's a great way to start, but I think the difference there too is emergency versus a non-emergency. But how do you determine that?
Right.
And I'll make it personal again, taking a look at my husband on a bicycle hit from behind. To look at him, you would not know there was internal bleeding. You would not know he just had double bypass surgery, you know, 2 months before that. To look at him, who's going to decide emergency versus non-emergency?
Good point.
So you've got a liability issue there, and you've got to look at it.
Mr. Lee, please identify yourself again.
David Lee, Oak Hill. Okay, if either one of y'all is elected as a council member, would you entertain the ideal of a 10% cut straight across the board for everybody in that works for the county? We took a big whack the last 8 years out here in the private sector. County government, city government, federal government, they don't know nothing's happening. Would y'all introduce that at each meeting? Have the nerve to ask every time you set up that board up there for a 10% cut?
First thing that we did years ago when the economy turned, my husband said, first thing we have to do is do away with the 401k. We did away with our own retirement first to keep the doors of the business open. Then we started consolidating. I know so many small business owners that are not even taking a paycheck in the private sector to keep the doors open, to keep the lights on. So I don't know, can't sit here tonight and tell you that every meeting I'm going to put that forward, but the county manager, taking a look at that, it's worth taking a look at to see what our pay grade is and where our city or our county employees fit on the scale, pay scale. I think it's a fair question to ask, because from the private sector, we've been paying
Thank
it
you.
for a long time.
Mr. Hathaway.
You can't mandate a 10% cut in pay to people who are in unions because it has to be bargained. That's the law. Unfortunately, you can bring it up all you want. The issue is it cannot be done until you have a bargaining team that sits down and bargains. Now, the reality of it is you can go to impasse. You can get to the point to where they don't agree on one side and either party can declare impasse. Once you go to impasse, you have the issue of a general master who will come in and tell you his recommendation. Now, as the elected body, they don't have to accept his recommendation. The elected body can determine, we are going to do this. And if collectively, if there's at least 4 votes that say we're going to do this, then that's the way it's done. Now, there also could be filed charges against the labor, or against the people that are doing the labor union negotiations, if they're not doing it in good faith. Now, I'm not in the union, and I've never been in the union. I'm a small businessman, single owner, so, you know, I don't like the system, but that's the system we have.
Mr. Lee, before you get to your second question, I just want to follow up with that. It's a good question. Realistically, could you, and it's probably simplistic in asking, say, okay, you either go back 10% or we're just going to cut X percentage of your employees from the budget? Can you take that hardline approach?
That's what would happen with or without a union contract negotiating. You talk to the county manager with the budget, if you had enough votes in the council to say, in this category of spending, you're only going to have, we're going to reduce that by 10%. What would happen? You would either lose employees or have a pay reduction. So what happens, you can't just say, well, it's not in the negotiations, because the council directs the county manager, who then is responsible for the budget. So yes, you can handle it as a line item budget issue. You can absolutely take a look at that. What would happen probably is you would lose personnel versus an across-the-board cut. I would say, as a county manager, that's probably what would happen.
Jim, is that too draconian, too simplistic?
I just, I think everything has to be looked at in its proper perspective. You've got people out there at the low end of the pay scale, but if you took 10% from them, they'd be making less than minimum wage. And I'm not saying that some of us, the other day I went to work, I didn't make a dime because I had a whole bunch of stale bread to pick up because nobody bought any bread that day. It was my cost. And it is what it is. But the issue is you have to look at, you can't just arbitrarily, it doesn't impact someone that makes $100,000 nearly as much as somebody that makes $25,000 or less than that. So
Work the scale out.
and that's something, that's what you have to do. You have to look at it. You can't just say, I'm going to give you a 10% cut across the board. You have to look at each situation. And then.
Well, if the budget's $10 million and you say take 10% of it, well, the guy making $25,000, you can't take 10% of his budget, but the guy that's making $150,000, he can deserve a cut, and he's usually not union, and worth a whole lot less than the guy that's actually out here working. All he does is sit in the air conditioner. It's pretty simple.
Can we get to
Everything's top heavy. Cut it back down well. My second question is, y'all was talking about all of this money for the beautifications of the highways and all this stuff. What, does the county own all this property? Or is this private property they're beautified? Like Canal Street and US 1 and all you're talking about. Does the county own these properties, or does the cities own these properties, or is it private individuals?
City owns property that the infrastructure, the street, the sidewalks. We had to negotiate back in 1986 or 87 to do Smyrna Beach because it used to be a state road. And the state gave up the rights to the city. Well, it wasn't a very good deal for the city because the city now has to maintain it forever.